Hello and welcome to my site. This video will help to introduce you to the layout and resources available here. To begin, let's first address what we're talking about: sexual wellness awareness and education in the deaf community. There is a notable disparity between deaf and hearing populations when it comes to this topic, with many deaf people lacking the access they need to what sex ed programs do exist. The goal for this site is to raise awareness of this issue, examine research on the topic, and provide resources in American Sign Language to encourage accessibility. So, here we have a little about me. I'm a junior at the University of South Florida, majoring in ASL interpreting and minoring in linguistics. I've also grown up in the Tampa Bay area, so I know the kind of sex education that was offered in local schools, and I know many people did not get access to the knowledge they should have from those programs. I was interested in looking at the cross-section of these already lacking programs and the frequent accessibility barriers experienced by deaf individuals to see the impact upon the community. With this next tab, we really start to get into the meat of the matter. We start off here with our peer-reviewed sources, where you can find some really good articles researching the sex ed experiences of deaf individuals, ideas for future programs, and more. So, as you can see, each article has a little space here with the title, DOI, and a brief description. Also, if you click on the DOI here, it will take you right to the article so you can read the full thing yourself. So, this first article examines specifically the sexual behaviors of deaf LGBT people in the Philippines, seeking to understand how those identities impact their sexual experiences and knowledge. They found that many of these individuals had high rates of non-use of condoms, as well as inadequate knowledge of sexually transmitted infections, such as HIV and syphilis, and how they are spread. The authors suggest that this lack of awareness comes from two things: difficulty in accessing mainstream sexual health campaigns, and lack of qualified sign language interpreters who collaborate with professionals in the field to convey transdisciplinary knowledge of sexual health education. The authors also put forward their own approach to address the needs of this community. This next paper here looks at our issue as a whole and examines what exactly about the deaf community makes it necessary for sex ed programs to be tailored to their culture. They single out specific factors that influence what information is needed in sex ed for this specific group. Next, we have a survey seeking to find any disparities between rates of intimate partner violence, or IPV, for deaf and hearing individuals. They found that deaf respondents had higher rates of emotional abuse and much higher rates of forced sex than their hearing peers. The authors emphasized the importance of IPV intervention organizations that are specifically oriented to the deaf community. This next article examines the role of bilingual communication and the bicultural character for deaf people in the process of sex education. It seeks to find the most effective way to provide that education with these traits in mind. This dissertation here uses narrative inquiry to compare the experiences of a hearing lesbian with that of a deaf lesbian. It examines the specific intersectional identity and the way that the majority hearing and heteronormative cultures impact these minority individuals. Now down here we've got some more sources that are not necessarily from these academic journals, but they still provide some important perspectives and ideas on the matter. At the bottom here we have some more thoughts about the barriers and disparities faced by the deaf community between these two. And here we have a suggested method for teaching sex ed specifically to deaf blind people with cognitive disabilities. Here is a nice library of sexual wellness resources in ASL. And finally, thoughts from the NAD, which is the National Association of the Deaf, on the importance of queer interpreters. All of these are linked as well. Moving on along, we have our resources tab. Here we have a couple different things. So these orange boxes are interpreter resources. This one here is a good vocab boost, going over most common signs relating to sex and contraceptives. And then this one down here is one interpreter's example of how she would describe puberty in a human growth and development class. Then these dark pink ones are more general discussion of the issue. This video and this video are both good places to start with exploring what in particular is going wrong with the sex ed for deaf kids. This one here more specifically discusses the use of correct body words with children and the benefits that gives to them in the long term when it comes to bodily autonomy and sexual wellness. And then at the very bottom here, I've linked to the website for EPIC, which is Empath Partners in Care. They're a local resource here in Florida in the Tampa Bay area for anyone who needs it, and they provide medical services, counseling, support, education, and prevention services, as well as HIV and STI testing. The link is right here in the photo, and it'll take you to their main page here, where you can find all the locations and addresses right there, as well as their number. And last but of course not least, we have our references page here of all the lovely sources we've looked at. And that about wraps it up. I hope this was helpful.